Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit. We're continuing our series of daily morning meditations, where we generally look at one or another lessons that are assigned for morning or evening prayer, what is known as the Daily Office Lectionary. I thought today we would, for Friday morning, we take a look at the lesson that's assigned for the morning prayer lesson, and that is from the book Exodus. Now, we've been working our way through Genesis now for quite a while, and we've heard the story of, most recently, the story of Joseph, right, and his brothers. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. He goes into Egypt, and through God's intervention, he becomes a very powerful leader, second in command of all the Egyptian people, and the Pharaoh's right-hand man. And because of that, God gives him the ability to predict the coming famine, and makes Egypt prepared in order to save God's chosen remnant of the people of Israel. And so they come to Egypt to get food. Joseph reveals himself as the fact the brother that they'd sold into slavery. They thought they would never see him again. And basically that famous line that what you intended for evil, God intended for good, right? And through that, through Joseph's intervention, and through Pharaoh's gratitude to Joseph for saving the nation of Egypt, he invites Joseph's family, the people of Israel, to dwell in a part of Egypt called Goshen, and bring their cattle and their children, all that other stuff. And so suddenly we have a change of events. Joseph eventually dies. The ends of that book, Joseph dies, and now with the book Exodus, at the beginning, we hear the story of that change of course, because the people of Israel will go from being these welcome guests and thanksgiving for what Joseph has done for the nation of Egypt, to being, quite frankly, feared, and eventually enslaved. So Exodus chapter 1, beginning at verse number 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, who knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh's treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field of their service, wherein they made them serve, was the rigor. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, Every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. Okay, and the story ends there for today. But of course, I hope that you're starting to think, wait, I sort of remember this story, because if they're going to be taking the children and killing the firstborn, all the males, then we know a story about one of those males who ends up being rescued from the river, don't we? But I don't want to jump ahead of the story. So anyway, you see that this turn of fortune has happened. But of course, again, God has promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they would have a land to dwell in that would be their land. They're not in their land. They're in Egypt's land. And Egypt certainly has a strong military fear that if they're attacked by another nation and the people who are not Egyptians, who are living in their land, turn on the Egyptians, they're going to be a mighty force against them, joined up with others. So they decide that they must enslave these Egyptians. And of course, God is going to use this ultimately as a way to bring them out of their bondage, and fulfill the promise he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to bring them into that promised land eventually. This would be the means by which they will do it. But there's still some hard times ahead of them as God prepares that. And of course, where we hear at this point of the story in Exodus, when we hear about the males who are going to be discarded in the river, we know that one of them will be saved from that, and we know who that is. It's Moses, FYI. Okay, so today's Friday, and today will be our last opportunity for Stations of the Cross in Lent. I know there's one more Friday in Lent before Good Friday, but that happens to be Tigers opening day a week from today. So if you've been down here for Tigers opening game, it is unbelievable chaos here in our neighborhood, and so we don't want to afflict that on people trying to make their way down here for Stations. So this will be our last Stations of the Cross today. So 11 o'clock, Holy Communion, and then 12 o'clock noon, Stations of the Cross. If you've not been this year for Lent, I implore you to do your best to make it here and join us for that. And I hope that your Friday is a day full of blessings.